We are all hyped for Poppy's Playtime Chapter 3, and with the teaser released last year and a vague release date of 2023, players are frothing at the mouth for more information regarding the lore and what they can expect in Chapter 3. Because the chapters are releasing every year or so, everyone's combing through every piece of evidence they can find to try to piece together what's really going on within Playtime Co. Factory. Today I wanted to go over a theory of mine, or like a timeline theory of the piece of events to try to figure out when the main game takes place, and if possibly a timeline could even answer some theories and questions we have. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like down below and a comment with your own theories and what you think of this one. This is my first theory video, so I'm just kind of going with it, and I hope you guys like it. I've been working on a timeline theory for quite a while, and I'm hoping that by using key points and evidence that we've received throughout both the main game and Project Playtime, we could get together a timeline that could possibly answer some theory questions or even raise more questions for us, and then just deepen the lore even more. Our first piece of evidence is at the start of the game when we receive the mysterious retro VHS tape of the Poppy doll commercial, along with a letter talking about the disappearance of the employees 10 years ago. While Poppy was the first major landmark toy for Playtime Co. in 1950, we can assume the commercial was created and broadcast sometime in the 50s when TVs were introduced to family homes. In Chapter 2, in Elliot Ludwig's office, we come across a brown VHS tape that gives us a little bit more information regarding the mysterious CEO of Playtime Co. and a little bit more information about Playtime Co. itself.
Playtime Co. is the product of a great man by the name of Elliot Ludwig, divorced but a family man at heart.
So the factory opened up in 1930, and Ludwig's wife divorced him shortly after that same year. 30 years passed, and in 1960, Ludwig has suffered a major family event, a loss, something. It feels a little vague, so we're not really sure what's going on here.
In the 1960s, an unfortunate family death had pushed Ludwig down to his lowest.
The narrator is about to tell us the year when Ludwig was about to begin something like huge, really big, and then it cuts off. One question that isn't answered but I'm curious about is Ludwig's age, considering that 30 years passed between him opening up Playtime Co. Factory and the subsequent loss in 1960. I feel like his age could play a key part in his actions, such as, did he adopt a child after the divorce when he was young? Was his adopted child the major family loss, and were they an adult when they passed? And if Ludwig is the prototype, did he offer himself up as a test subject so he could live longer and experiment more? Or maybe he was on his deathbed when he became the prototype. While this point in the timeline doesn't necessarily answer any questions, it actually kind of brings up more. Because everyone thinks that it's possibly Ludwig's adopted child, even though it hasn't been stated yet, that could be in the Poppy doll, or his inspiration for creating these really creepy experiments. But I'm wondering if possibly it wasn't a child that died, but I mean, yeah, it'd be his kid if it was adopted, but if they were an adult when they passed, and that could explain a little bit why, if it is Poppy herself, why she seems so mature. This next piece of evidence is really peculiar to me. So everyone knows on Ludwig's desk, alongside the brown VHS tape, is a piece of paper with red ink talking about experiment notes for experiment 814. This experiment is talking about the testing of Poppy gel on rats. It also notes that using larger test subjects may yield different results. What is interesting about this page is that so far it's the only page regarding experiments and testing that doesn't have the Playtime Co. letterhead on it. Why I find this interesting is maybe these earlier experiments that were failing and they weren't sure if they were going to work were done in secret without the rest of the factory knowing, and it was a small team that was working on these. The next major key point is experiment 1006, the prototype. The prototype is usually described, well, at least if you Google search the word prototype, as a preliminary model of something from which other forms are developed or copied. The prototype was the first successful experiment in what is to believed to be fusing humans with toy or mechanical objects, toy parts, all that kind of stuff. From here, we next get Huggy Wuggy, which is experiment 1170. We get Mommy Longlegs, experiment 1222. Based on the information that we're given, the toy selection screen in Project Playtime, Mommy Longlegs was an experiment before a toy. The Mommy Longlegs toy wasn't released until 1991, and Huggy Wuggy was released in 1984, so we have a smaller window when the Bigger Bodies initiative that's mentioned by that doctor guy in Project Playtime might have began. It seems at least 100 or so experiments happened between experiment 814, prototype 1006, Huggy 1170, and Mommy 1222. I would estimate the experiments probably start around the mid to late 70s, and with the main large experiments coming around the mid 80s, possibly late 80s, up into 1990. After the introduction of the Mommy Longlegs experiment and the toy, we next get Rowan Stoll's storyline, which is all the information and stuff we are given before the release of Project Playtime. Again, Rowan Stoll's story, pretty straightforward, begins in March of 1991, ends in July 1991, and it ends with his demise to Boxy Boo. Now, we don't know much more about Boxy Boo, other than he was a toy that was released in 1966, and I believe we'll probably come across more information regarding Boxy Boo, possibly in more releases and updates with Project Playtime, or even in Chapter 3. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually the whole reason why I came up with this timeline theory. I wanted to know when the factory closed down and when the main game takes place. One of the biggest things I've noticed with this game is that everything is documented on video cassette tapes. Video cassette tapes were a main staple of documenting with film from the 70s up until the late 90s, when in 1997 DVDs hit the US market. So with BoogieBot releasing in 1993, and with no use of DVDs for documentation since they didn't release until 1997, the factory might have closed somewhere between 1993 and 1997, which would possibly make the main game events taking place between 2003 and 2007. Now, most of this information I pulled is based off of 2 chapters and of course what we get from Project Playtime. I'm sure with the release of Chapter 3 and even the teasers leading up to Chapter 3, and as they release more videos in Project Playtime, more lore, characters, we're gonna get more, and it could actually make my whole timeline a bust. Maybe it does take place in 2022 or 2023 or whatever modern time it's supposed to be. I just was really hoping that by figuring out a timeline, it could create more questions. Sometimes questions can answer other questions. There's a whole world in this game that we still don't know, and they are so good at keeping evidence from us from really completing everything, from answering all our questions. I also feel like it's important to have this timeline because if this factory's been around since the 30s, and if Ludwig is still around, he'd be old as heck. Oh my god. Like, he'd be really old. So that's why I want to know. Now, we can look back on the Poppy doll VHS tape, and that's supposed to be Elliot Ludwig is what I'm assuming, or maybe it's someone posing as him. And in that video, that version of Elliot Ludwig looks like he's already in his 50s, so he might already, like, I don't know if he's even still around, or maybe he is part of the prototype. Matt Pat's theory that he was involuntarily chosen to be the prototype, I'm not sure if I actually agree with that. My belief is that possibly he volunteered to do it because he was old and on his deathbed and wanted to live longer, wanted to see one of his experiments succeed, and it's like, you know what, while I'm here, while I'm dying, might as well just give it a try, because if I die in the process, oh, nothing's really gonna happen, I guess, you know? So that's what I think, is that he might have volunteered for it to see if it would work, and if it did work, it'd allow him to live longer, and he could keep experimenting and see his experiments succeed and then save children. Which is also probably why he's not mentioned in future documents, like how Matt Pat brought up that at some point people in the factory start talking about Ludwig in the past tense. So maybe publicly they said he had passed away, but really he is the prototype. We won't know until chapter 3. So let me know what you guys think of my theory. This is my first theory video. I was kind of excited. It was kind of hard to piece together, but I'm still pretty proud of what I did. Let me know what you think about this theory. If you have any evidence or key points I might be missing, let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you want to see more Project Playtime, Poppy's Playtime theory videos from me, also let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to click that subscribe button. That's somewhere down there. And I will see you guys all in the next video.